What's going on, you guys? TBR here, back yet again with another King of Fighters All-Star video. In today's video, we are going to be shining the spotlight firmly upon one of our newest EX characters to be added into the game with the Street Fighter V collaboration. That's right, you guys. Today is going to be the spotlight video for EX Akuma. Now, I have been playing around with this character since the day of his release. I was able to go ahead and get him to A5 on day one, and therefore in today's video, I'm going to be bringing all of my observations as well as my overall thoughts and opinions on this character to you guys, as well as any pertinent information that I feel is going to be important as far as whether or not you are going to be deciding if you are going to be pulling for this character, building this character, and investing in this character. We have a lot to go over in today's video, but before we go ahead and get into all of that and more, make sure if you guys haven't already done so, you smash that like button and subscribe. Without further ado, you already know what time it is. Cue that intro. Alright, you guys, so as always, I will have timestamps in the description, so that way you guys can jump to whichever part of this video is most important to you. So with that being said and out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the spotlight for EX Akuma. So when it comes to EX Akuma, right off the bat, you are going to notice that he is a purple attack type with a leadership ability that increases attack type fighters' attack by 40% and their critical rate by 10%. Leadership skill-wise, this isn't anything that is all that great. I would honestly say that you'll probably never use it. Not really anything that is worth mentioning. When it comes to EX Akuma, obviously he is also not going to be an SS or a BS character, much to the chagrin of a lot of people out there. So therefore, this is going to be a character that is not going to have things such as the exclusive option cards or exclusive set cards for either of those typings that he has available to him. However, as a Street Fighter V character, he has his own tricks when it comes to cards that he can use, and we will be covering those in this video. So, I feel like the first thing we should probably go ahead and break down here is going to be the cores. Right off the bat, you are going to notice that 30% power charge rate increase, which you love to see on any of your characters. And then when we go through the normal cores here, you're going to notice pretty much a greatest hits of some of the better cores that you'll get for generic cores, such as critical damage rate, critical rate, and so on. So in general, he does have some nice overall cores, but really what makes or breaks any of these characters is always going to be their exclusive cores, and thankfully when it comes to EX Akuma, this is really where he starts to kind of stand out. So first up here we have Master of the Fist. Now this is going to reflect fear and burn. Really when it comes to reflecting fear, this isn't necessarily anything that's that big of a deal in PVE. However, obviously if you've played PvP, you understand just how important that is. Very, very good part of this core. And then being able to also reflect burn is one of those things where obviously it isn't going to come up that often in PvE, but when it does, it is definitely going to be beneficial. And again, when it comes to PvP, very, very solid. So when we talk about PvE here, let's talk about this part. 50% chance to apply fear to all enemies for 0.5 seconds upon landing a skill. So first things first, you're going to notice this is a 50% chance to apply fear to everyone. So in PvE, basically, he has a 50% chance to apply fear to everybody for 0.5 seconds, which is obviously a very low amount of time. However, you're also going to notice that there's no cooldown. So this is something that he can kind of just spam, which is almost kind of just broken, in my opinion. But again, they did balance it just a little bit with the short time frame. So keep that in mind, but it does have the ability to fear the entire mob on the screen, which is really, really solid. Also has a 20% chance to decrease the cooldown of Sekia Goshoa by 100% for 3 seconds upon landing a skill, guard included, on a cooldown of 20 seconds. This is really what makes this character so broken when it comes to his damage output. As you guys can see, he does have a core very akin to what we saw with a character such as Dark Ash. When it comes to Dark Ash, one of the most broken things about him is being able to spam his projectile for a solid 3 seconds straight. And as you guys can see, Akuma is also able to do this with his S1, which is really just devastating, but it also comes in handy in things such as Guild Raid, because honestly, this is where you're going to notice that you have very little downtime between finishers. You shouldn't ever have a problem when it comes to needing PG in those modes, thanks to this. And another thing that really is cool about this is you can exploit this in things such as Nightmare Geese. So for instance, if Nightmare Geese decides that he's going to drop that ground aura and you're trying to do a solo run, you can pretty much just go to the opposite side of the screen like most people normally would in a solo run, and instead of standing there guarding and waiting for him to come to you, you can just spam your fireballs at him. And if you do that, you can pressure him to come towards you quicker. So that's just kind of a little aside, and I'll talk more about that when we get to the guild raid breakdown. But this is a super broken skill, and in general, this core is really, really good. So that is going to be Master of the Fist, but it gets better. So we have Satsui no Hado, and this is going to deal burn damage equal to 5.5 times of the remaining burn damage, and removes burn upon landing an active skill on a burn target on a cooldown of 1 second. So obviously, Akuma does have Burn Explosion. This is basically going to mean when we talk about the stones, that this character is going to like Burn R stones. That is something that you're probably going to want to try to invest in if you have them. In general, when it comes to spammable explosion, the 5.5 times is always going to be something that you are going to notice is just going to break some of these characters when it comes to their damage output. And the fact that he has this here and you can spam it on a cooldown of 1 second means that this character's damage output is going to be just that much better. And obviously, this is going to be a pure damage nuke of a character, and this is really where you start to see that come in. Now, we also have this part of the core which makes him immune to damage for 4 seconds when his HP is 30% or less on a cooldown of 10 seconds. This is super duper important, especially in things such as the Wary Colossal, but in general, this is just an amazing save in general. It's also going to be very beneficial in things such as Guild Raid, because his survivability, because he is a glass cannon, is going to be a little bit suspect in things such as Inferno difficulties, and you're probably going to want to be using a healing striker such as Nostalgia Chun-Li. So having this immunity here is really helpful for him to keep him in the fight. Then we also have a PvP exclusive here. Now this is going to be his critical hit shield. I don't think I need to explain that to you guys, but it is a PvP exclusive. This has been a major subject of contention for most of the people out there playing with these characters when it comes to the Street Fighter V collaboration. A lot of people are very upset that these characters don't have native shields in PvE. Now, obviously, this is something he does carry, but only in PvP, so keep that in mind. This is going to damage his overall survivability quite a bit, but like I will mention throughout this video, it really doesn't come up that often as long as you're playing correctly and you're being careful, and you're also doing a few things that I'll kind of tip you off on. So in general, that is going to be there for a PvP exclusive, which is just absolutely ridiculous on a character such as this. It's very overkill for a character like this, we'll put it that way. And then we have the Street Fighter V exclusive core that all these characters are going to share and carry. So the Street Fighter V core is going to increase attack by 40% if HP is 50% or more, so really solid right off the bat, and decreases damage received by 8% each time HP decreases by 10% and stacks up to 5. So this is a really nice little multiplier to help you as far as keeping your characters in the fight. Again, being that some of these characters are going to be glass cannons, you love to see this on here. Really, the big deal, though, is going to be this increase to your attack by 40% if your HP is 50% or more. So obviously, you're going to want to keep your character's HP as high as possible, or at least above that 50% line, so that you can keep this part of this buff. But in general, as you guys can tell, between the fact that he has this 5.5 times explosion, this immunity to damage, as well as this 20% chance to basically just spam his S1 for 3 seconds, this character has amazing overall cores, and I really don't have a whole lot of negatives to say here outside of the fact that I guess I would kind of like to see this shield be for PvE, but at the same time, if that were the case, this character would probably be a little bit too broken. So, with all that out of the way, those are going to be the cores, you guys. Next up here, we are going to go ahead and take a look at the skills. So first and foremost, I'll talk about Concentrate when we get to the EX cores. We'll talk about that, so I'm going to go ahead and skip over that for the moment. But let's go ahead and talk about the normal skills. So first up here on the S1, we do have a projectile skill. Now this is going to be that one that we just talked about in the course, where you're basically for 3 seconds going to be able to spam it. This is his projectile. This is going to be his fireball. It's one of his best overall skills. And as you guys can see, it's going to increase your attack by 50% for 7 seconds. It's also going to apply Infernal Flame to the target for 12 seconds upon landing a skill, which of course is the tier 2 version of Burn. So when it comes to the S1, it really isn't doing anything super fancy. It's going to be applying your burn, which is going to be your Infernal Flame, and it's going to be increasing your attack by 50% for 7 seconds. The nicest thing about this, again, is that core where you're going to be able to spam it for 3 seconds. So really, really good. Now, on to the S2, which is going to be a strike skill. This is where we see the interrupt with hyper armor. So as you guys can see, this can be used when attacked, but it is limited to standing or airborne. And he also gets hyper armor for 3 seconds with a 70% chance to remove the target's hyper armor or shield upon landing a hit. This is in particular line here is going to be extremely good for PvP. This is going to make him just that much more of a monster. And also, of course, we do have the hyper armor with the interrupt, but we've come to expect that on pretty much any meta character at this point. It is a very standard combination. So in general, that is pretty much going to be standard fare on the S2. Keep in mind, when it comes to the S2, this is going to have really good range on it. You can pretty much connect this from full screen, and it does have off the ground. But at the same time, you're probably going to want to be around mid-screen or so when you use this in order to get the most out of your damage. Because honestly, from full screen, you're going to be missing out on some of that. The S1 also has off the ground as well, and is full screen, obviously, because it's projectile, but I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. So, when it comes to the S3 is interesting. It's a grab, so this is going to be kind of his jump, for lack of a better term. It's kind of interesting though, because it is going to be another one that you can use from a full screen distance. However, I would say mid screen is probably the safest bet, and it does also have off the ground, so keep that in mind. So this one is going to increase your attack by 60% for 7 seconds, and increases the target's damage received by 35% for 7 seconds upon landing a skill, and as well as activating this effect here, which I'm not going to attempt to pronounce, when attacking targets that don't activate his skill, which deals darkness damage equal to 550% of attack every 0.15 seconds for 1 second. So what this basically is going to be an insurance policy for his grab. So in things such as Spider Robot, Guild Raid, so on, where he can't actually grab a character or a boss, this is actually going to help him with his overall damage output and compensate for that. This is really, really nice, and it is something that we saw on characters such as Blue Mary in the past, although I would say hers is probably going to be maybe just a little bit better because she has more grabs in general. But at the same time, this is a super solid insurance policy for this skill. It makes up for the fact that this is a grab skill, because typically grab skills are going to be a bit of a double-edged sword in things such as Guild Raid and so on, like I mentioned. Now, all that out of the way, let's talk about the finishers. So when it comes to the core finisher, obviously the core finisher is going to have an effect. This effect increases the target's damage received by 15% for 10 seconds upon landing a skill. This is a really interesting one. The core finisher in general has a nice long animation on it for a core finisher by comparison to some of the ones we've seen with this collaboration. And when it comes to the core finisher, it does raise that pillar of flame in the screen right underneath whatever the enemy is in front of you. However, there are exploits to it that you can use in different use cases that I find kind of interesting. So basically in things such as Nightmare Geese, for example, again, to talk about that ground aura technique that Geese likes to use, usually you'll want to go to the other side of the screen in a solo run and try to wait that out and get him back towards you so you don't end up in that aura. However, this is a really cool finisher for him, because if you're not completely on the other end of the battlefield, I would say about halfway away from him on the battlefield, you can go ahead and throw this out there, and you will notice that it will spawn itself right underneath him on the other side of the screen, and you'll still be able to do damage and typically force him away from that ground aura and back toward you, So you can actually use this to your benefit in things such as Nightmare Geese, but in general, this also has some really nice little shield shred on it, and I do like this finisher. The fact that it has this effect on it is kind of just an added bonus, and overall, I don't think that this is as bad of a finisher as some of the core finishers on some of these other characters that we're going to talk about from this collaboration. In fact, I would say that this is actually a very solid one. So that is pretty much going to be the core finisher. Let's talk about the 3PG card finisher. In order to do that though, I want to go ahead and go here because this does have an effect. So as you guys can see, this is a 3PG card finisher. It's an extremely long animation. Really super good. Now this is going to be an amazing overall 3PG finisher, especially considering the fact, like we have already mentioned, thanks to the core that he has, where he's going to be able to spam the S1 as well as concentration, which we'll talk about when we get to the EX core board. This character should never have problems when it comes to firing off finishers. This means that his clock stop ability and his shield shred are actually going to be extremely strong. His clock stop ability in general is going to be a little bit better than his shield shred. However, if you do have the proper dot applied, he's going to be able to drop shield extremely quickly thanks to some of these finishers. So the effect on this finisher is going to be as follows. It increases attack by 10% and penetration by 400 for 10 seconds when using it. This is a really nice added effect, but honestly, you guys, the best thing about this thing in general is going to be the fact that it is going to have that super long animation. Now, keep in mind, you are going to have the special effects for these as well. I went ahead and just picked up the active skill damage one, but if you want to increase your overall CP more, go ahead and go for the crit one. Otherwise, I would say go for attack or active skill. But really, that's kind of the order I would go in. I would go crit for CP only, really, at that point. Otherwise, go for attack and then active skill. So that is going to be what we have for the overall skills and the cores. In general, extremely good stuff. But we do need to talk about the EX core board in order to get the full breadth of knowledge on this character's kit. So I'm not going to go in and talk about the stats and the different things you can buff here. Obviously, that is going to come down to kind of whatever it is you're wanting to do. But I want to talk about the skills here. So Concentrate, in my opinion, is going to be the best of the two. The reason for this is this basically takes what he has for that core for the S1 and gives him the ability to put that on the S3 as well, which is extremely broken. As you guys can see, it is going to go ahead and reset the skill cooldown for his S3, which is his grab, the one that applies that darkness burst. It's going to reset that and decrease its cooldown for 3 seconds. That is extremely powerful. That means that you're overall going to be able to fill in gaps whenever the shield is up in things such as Guild Raid with more damage, and you don't have to go ahead and forsake the full timer for your awakening spam. This is a really good buffer ability for him whenever the shield is up to keep the pressure on and to keep firing off his finishers if he happens to be short on PG. And in general, the rest of this thing, basically, as you can see, it can be used when attacked, so it's limited to standing, airborne, or knockdown. Really good there. PVE exclusive, resets the skill cooldowns of all of his active skills. And then, like I just mentioned and went over, he is going to be able to spam his S3 for 3 seconds. Amazing overall skill. Highly recommend this one if you are building your Akuma. So that is going to be pretty much what we see there. In general, extremely good stuff. Max isn't bad. I've used Max, and you'll actually see it mostly in this video because I've only been using Concentrate for the past couple of days. So I have moved over to Concentrate, as you guys can see, and I'm not planning on moving back. But as you guys can see here, this is going to be the other option. It's not bad, but I would say that honestly, Concentrate is going to be the best of the two by far, just for the fact that you can go ahead and spam that S3 for 3 seconds. It's really broken. So that is pretty much what we got there. Now let's go ahead and talk about the equipments. So all I'm going to recommend to you guys is going to be 2 card sets. The reason for this is because if you're watching this video, if you have Akuma, you should be able to get the best card slot for him. And that should be this set here, the Peaceful Days Type 1, Type 2, and Type 3 set that you get from the Rush Dungeon. You want this set for this character. In general, this is going to increase his burn damage by 75%. It's also going to increase his attack by 22% for 7 seconds when he lands an active skill on a cooldown of 10 seconds. And in general, this is overall just going to be the best set for him. And if you have Akuma, chances are you're going to have this set because it is a free set from the Rush Dungeon. You want to make sure that you get this. Again, this is going to be, in my opinion, the best in slot for this character. Now, the next best set, in my opinion, that you could probably use on him, again, keep in mind he is not an SS or BS, so he cannot access those exclusive card sets for either of those archetypes. But as you guys can see, the 1000 Blows set is a really good set. It increases your Street Fighter V fighters' active skill damage by 25%. It increases their attack by 20% for 5 seconds when they land an active skill, and they become immune to damage for 3 seconds when their HP is 10% or less. An extremely good set. One might even argue that you might want to use this in things such as Inferno at low awakening levels to keep yourself in the fight and to kind of wait out a heal on a striker or something like that with this save. But at the same time, you are going to miss out on some damage by comparison to the previous set that we talked about. So that is the one that I would recommend probably secondarily for him. And again, this is another Street Fighter set, so if you have this character, you should have had the chance at this set. However, if you don't have it, keep in mind that the best one for him overall, in my opinion, is still going to be the free one that you should be able to get no problem. And then finally, as an honorable mention, just to give you guys something else, basically I am going to recommend the Gintama set. Now, the Gintama set is kind of a baby version of the Street Fighter V set that we talked about from the Rush Dungeon. It's going to increase your burn damage by 75% and your active skill damage by 20%. In general, I would say that this is really a big step down from the other one. I wouldn't necessarily say I would use that one over it in any way, shape, or form. Really what you want is this set, in my opinion, and you're going to be in amazing shape. So, with all that out of the way, that's pretty much what we got there, but there is one more card I want to talk about, and that is going to be his exclusive option. So again, being that he is a non-SS and non-BS character, Akuma is not going to have access to things such as option cards for either of those archetypes. However, he does have his own option. As you guys can see, this is going to increase your attack by 5%, decrease your skill cooldowns by 1.2 seconds, and increases your burn damage dealt by 60% for 5 seconds upon using an active skill on a cooldown of 13 seconds. When we get to the stones for this character, we're going to talk about just how important that explosion is, but this right here, increasing your burn damage dealt by 60%, is extremely important for him. I would say that this is probably going to be a must for him. Thankfully, this is a free card that you can get from the tower, so this shouldn't be anything that you should have a problem getting. So overall, I would say that this is going to be something you're going to want to use on your Akuma. I would highly, highly recommend it. Now, let's talk about stones. There's a lot to talk about. Now, first thing I should probably mention, I do not have the perfect build for stones. Not even anywhere close, in my opinion. There have been a lot of tests run on these stones from a lot of different people out there, and in general, the general consensus seems to be that you want purple, burn, double attack R stones. The reason for that is going to be because of that spammable explosion. You cannot underestimate just how much damage that puts up, especially in things such as a shield down scenario in Guild Raid. The difference is pretty impressive. Now, basically for me right now, I only have one of those, so I do not have the ability to build my Akuma to my liking. Otherwise, I would do that. However, you will also notice, for those of you out there who are going to be kind of in a position where you have both, if you notice here, you're actually going to lose CP if you do this. So if you're somebody that really wants just to build as much CP on your Akuma as possible, maybe for something like Chapter of Fight or so on, you'll probably also want to look into those. It isn't a huge upgrade as far as CP is concerned, but I figured I'd throw that in there. So in general, right now in this video, this is the build you're going to see with as far as the footage is concerned. I do have 2 attack stones here for my circle and my square from the Street Fighter V collab, and then I have my lone attack, double attack, purple R stone for burn on my hexagon slot. If I had my way, and if I were to recommend anything, I would definitely recommend that you have a full set of gold R stones, double attack, purple, burn. That is what I would recommend. Same thing applies for the Star and the Moon stones. This one here is an HP stone, unfortunately, because I had a selection box, but hey, I would rather have stats than no stats. Thankfully, it does increase my burn damage, and it increases my attack type fighter's attack, so that's what's important. As you guys can tell here, this one's just a double attack stone with Starlight, so that really isn't doing much for him there as far as dot, but more stats are more stats. Again, guys, if you can increase his burn, that spammable explosion is going to do absolutely bonkers damage. I'm sure you guys have seen other YouTubers by now that have been using their A5, A6 Akuma, and they've been putting up big numbers, like numbers that are bigger than what you're going to see in this video today. A lot of that has to do with the fact that almost all of them are using the full burn suite, which I am extremely jealous of, but I would highly recommend nonetheless. So I feel like that pretty much covers everything as far as the overall build, as far as any of the skills, anything that we need to know about the kind of idiosyncrasies of the kit. Now we can go ahead and get into the footage, you guys. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and show you the fame, just so you guys are aware of where I'm at with my fame. And now we can go ahead and jump into it, but this is going to be my fame here, just so you guys are aware for full transparency. So keep that in mind. And with that being said, you guys, let's go ahead and get into the spotlight for EX Akuma. Thanks in no small part to the fact that EX Akuma does boast the spam ability on his S1, as well as being able to spam his S3 if he has EX skill concentration attached to him. EX Akuma is going to be able to go in against almost any mob and simply and utterly decimate the competition. Barring any sort of penalty in whatever game mode that you are currently playing in, EX Akuma is going to be able to one-tap most mobs with ease, and if not, he's simply going to be able to go in and spam his fireballs on his S1 and completely and utterly wipe them off the map. Another thing that is very important to note is the forgiving nature of the S2 and the S3 as far as his XY axis is concerned, and when you combine all of these things with an extremely long 3PG finisher for his card finisher, EX Akuma passes the test against mobs and bosses with ease and is one of the strongest characters in this regard. To say that EX Akuma is dominant in PVAI would be an understatement. If you're someone that plays any sort of PvP modes, you would already know that this is a character that is almost unfair for any PvP mode, thanks to the fact that he is able to spam his S1 the way that he's able, as well as the fact that he is going to have so much damage that he carries along with him. EX Akuma is going to be able to dominate things such as League and Absolute War. When it comes to Guild Raid, like any character, EX Akuma is not going to be without his faults. However, I am happy to report that this is a character that is absolutely dominant in Guild Raid and has way more positives than negatives. So let's go ahead and talk about those. When it comes to EX Akuma, first and foremost, being the damage nuke that he is, this is going to be a very squishy character. Therefore, for things such as the nuke from Omega Rugal, as well as the ground aura as far as Nightmare Geese is concerned, you are going to want to be very cautious, and in things such as Inferno difficulties, I would highly recommend bringing along with you a character such as a Nostalgia Chun-Li as a striker in order to make things a little bit easier on yourselves. But when it comes to EX Akuma, thanks to the fact that he is able to put out as much damage as he is, this is going to be a character that you are going to notice is going to be able to put up almost as much damage with a shield up scenario as a lot of characters put up with a shield down scenario. So when it comes to overall high numbers, he is going to be able to put up some of the highest numbers in the game for any difficulty against either of the bosses in Guild Raid, as long as you can keep him in the fight. Other things that you want to take note of are going to be the fact that he does have that extremely long 3PG card finisher, which is very exploitable in Guild Raid when you consider the fact that you aren't going to have much of any downtime between your finishers, thanks to the fact that you are going to be able to spam the S1, as well as having concentration on your EX skill. You shouldn't really have any downtime between your finishers, so that is something that is going to be very beneficial for this character as far as his longevity and his use case scenarios in Guild Raid. When it comes to anything else about this character in Guild Raid, Typically speaking, what you're going to want to do is you're just going to want to go ahead and spam as many finishers as possible until you can get that shield down, and then you can go to town with your awakening rotation, or you can go ahead and exploit concentration whenever the shield is up in order to kind of fill in the gaps as needed. When it comes to this character's performance against specific modes, of course he is going to be most geared towards things such as expert difficulty against Omega Rugal, as well as hard difficulty against Omega Rugal, thanks to the fact that he is going to possess the prominent dots needed, being Burn and Darkness. However, when it comes to Lunatic and Inferno, you aren't going to have very many issues as far as soloing with him as long as you can keep him healed up. Again, thanks to the fact that he is able to output as much damage as he's capable of. Really, there isn't any situation in any of these tiers or difficulties where this character is going to have much of any issue achieving a 1 key at a high enough awakening level. In fact, being the fact that this character can output the amount of damage that he is able to, typically you are not going to need very high awakening levels for this character in order to achieve a 1 key, so this should be a cheap 1 key solo character for a lot of accounts out there, so long as people are able to go ahead and pull him to about awakening level 2 or 3. You shouldn't have much of any issue whatsoever taking him in and getting a 1 key. Now, when it comes to Nightmare Geese, there are a few things that you're going to want to be well aware of. First, when it comes to the core finisher, while it may have its downsides against Nightmare Geese, it is actually a godsend. Thanks to the fact that whenever he uses that ground aura, typically if you're soloing, you're going to want to retreat to the other side of the screen. EX Akuma is able to go ahead and throw out his core finisher, and the pillar of fire that comes along with it will go ahead and spawn itself right below the boss, as long as you are not completely on the other side of the screen. So you're going to want to pay attention to how far you position yourself away from that ground aura. My recommendation would be to not put yourself too far away and put yourself about half the screen away from the character. That way you can go ahead and throw out that core finisher, which oftentimes will force the boss away from that ground aura, so that way he comes towards you quicker and you have less downtime when it comes to not attacking him, and you overall are not going to lose as many seconds off the clock that way. This is a very important note about him, but also to the same effect, you can go ahead and do the same thing with the S1 and spam your fireballs from about halfway across the screen while he's using his ground aura technique to keep the pressure up as well as the damage going. And this is another big reason why this character is so good here, thanks to the fact that he is going to be able to output so much damage even when he is not anywhere near the boss. However, there are going to be downsides when it comes to Nightmare Geese. The first thing you're going to notice is against Nightmare Geese, he is going to have a little bit harder of a time as far as shredding the shield, and he's also going to have a little bit rougher of a time when it comes to surviving. But again, bring a healing striker and you should be in good shape. Otherwise, just slot him into a team and watch him go with the shield down. Ah yes, Immortals. What used to be a slight challenge in this game has now been relegated to being nothing more than just another punching bag mode, thanks to the fact that Netmarble has gone crazy over the course of the past year with power creep, and when it comes to EX Akuma, he is no exception. Thanks to the fact that he is able to spam the S1 as much as he can, that he has that extremely long 3PG card finisher, and he is going to be able to put up the best damage that you will find. This is going to be a character that is absolutely going to hard carry you here, and if you have an EX Akuma and you still haven't finished one of these Immortals, congratulations. All you have to do is wait for them to rotate in, and you'll be able to do just that. Now, as a bit of a bonus clip, I have 2 more clips for you guys. First and foremost, let's talk about the Wary Colossal, because I think that it is definitely worth noting how dominant EX Akuma is in this mode. Now really, when it comes to the Wary Colossal, there's a couple of different reasons why EX Akuma is so good here. Now first and foremost, when it comes to his damage output, that goes without saying at this point, as we've established. This is going to be one of the most hard-hitting characters in the entire game, and as you guys can tell
tell from this clip, this is going to be no exception. Going in against the wary Colossal with a character such as EX Akuma is basically like trying to shovel snow off your driveway with a flamethrower. This is going to be a character that is going to absolutely dominate this mode, and as you guys can tell, the damage is pretty much inherent when you use him. However, another big key point when it comes to him is going to be the fact that he is also going to be able to survive the nuke. This means that he's going to be able to stick around till the end of the fight, so therefore you're going to be able to put up some pretty crooked numbers just solely thanks to the fact that EX Akuma exists. So if you're in need of help against the wary Colossal and you're still unable to output as much damage as you see some of your fellow guild members putting up, investing into EX Akuma is probably going to be the wisest investment that you can make, because at the end of the day, honestly you guys, the damage output here is so high that it's very hard for me not to consider him to be one of the overall best characters in the entire game in this mode, and I really do think that this is one of the places where this character shines the most. So at the end of the day, you guys, if you need help against the wary Colossal, definitely look at EX Akuma as being your answer, because chances are he's going to be a strict upgrade over whatever character you have been using prior. And finally, the last clip I want to go ahead and show you guys is going to be against everyone's favorite punching bag in the King of Fighters All-Star, the Mecha Spider B1000. What used to be a mode that was quite the challenge for most players has now been relegated to being nothing more than a joke, and EX Akuma is a prime example as to why. If you're someone who is still having trouble clearing this mode, chances are you're going to want to invest in EX Akuma just so that way you can go ahead and start clearing this thing with ease. As you guys are going to see here, my EX Akuma is going to be able to go in against the spider and do almost 3 times the amount of damage necessary in order to achieve that final box reward. As you guys will tell from this clip, he's going to put up just shy of 1 billion damage, which is ludicrous when you consider the fact that this used to be one of the most challenging modes in the entire game. And honestly, I would say that if you're someone that wants to go ahead and clear this thing out, you'll probably want to go ahead and invest in EX Akuma, because he is going to make it very, very easy to do so. And at the end of the day, it's kind of fun just to be able to see how much damage you can put up against this thing by himself. At the end of the day, EX Akuma is an uber tier damage dealer with some very broken mechanics when it comes to his S1. However, he is a very squishy attack type with no shield in PVE, and as a native EX character can be quite costly in order to build.
Well, there you have it, you guys, the spotlight for EX Akuma. So, what is my final score for this character? In my opinion, Akuma is going to be a 9 out of 10. The reason for that is because this character, while he is one of the most powerful characters in the entire game on damage, this character is a pure damage nuke. He does have one glaring flaw, and that is going to be the fact that he is very squishy and doesn't have that shield. This is going to be something that is going to come up, especially at lower awakening levels in things such as your more difficult guild raid tiers. However, I would say that that is going to be a minor nitpick when it comes to a character this powerful. If I did 0.5s and things like that, I would say he'd be a 9.5 out of 10. However you want to cut it, either way, this character is an extremely, extremely powerful uber tier meta character that you definitely want to take into high consideration as far as how you budget your rubies with this collaboration. This is a character that I would say you definitely do not want to skip. This is a character I would say that you probably want to make sure that you get, especially if you're someone that is not a veteran that is going to have just a stacked roster of all these other previously released BS and SS characters. Even then, however, he is going to be a strict upgrade in damage against most of those, and probably going to be one of your favorite characters on your roster if you invest in him highly enough. My recommendation is to at least try to go for the A3 like any character. I don't think that you need to go for the A5 on these EX characters necessarily. However, there is going to be a nice argument to be made there, thanks to the fact that if you do not A5 this character, you're not going to have access to Concentrate, which really is very broken. However, at the same time, it isn't going to be something that you're going to use so often that if you don't have it, you're going to miss it that much. However, it is super nice to have it. So I would say at least try to go for the A3 on a budget if you can. That way you can at least get all those stones on him. And I think that that is definitely the way to go as a budget player. And then if you're somebody out there that has enough rubies to go in and consider trying to A5 him, I think that you definitely should probably take that into consideration, because this is a character that could end up, just thanks to the fact that him, and as well as some of these other Street Fighter V characters, because a lot of these Street Fighter V characters are putting up similar damage. They all have their pros and their cons. I would say that Akuma definitely, in my opinion, is a little bit better than a lot of them. But at the same time, it's going to be one of those situations where if you're definitely budgeting for this collaboration in general, I would say he's going to be one that you're going to want to take into a high consideration as far as how you spend. But anyway, you guys, that is my opinion, and just my opinion as well as my observations. You can let me know in the comment section down below how you feel about EX Akuma. Do you have him? Are you planning on going for him? If you do have him, how are you enjoying him? Let me know in the comment section down below. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it informative. If you did, smash that like button and subscribe. And until the next one, you all take care. Peace.
Continue.